Welcome to the deep dive. I'm so glad you've decided to join us today.
Yes, we really are. It's great to have you here.
Whenever we sit down at this microphone, we usually have this massive stack of sources.
Oh, yeah. Articles, research papers, historical notes, you name it.
Right. And our mission is always to sift through all of that material to find those incredible nuggets of insight that help you navigate your actual everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And today is really no different, but our primary source is just incredibly grounding.
It is.
We are looking at this brilliant essay by Brother Woody Brum. It's titled Biblical Permission to Make Your Plans.
Which is such a great title, by the way.
It really is. And the core of what we're doing today is unpacking the tension between sincere faith and responsible planning.
Ugh.
Because let's be honest.
We all live right in the middle of that tension.
Exactly. We do.
It's something you feel the moment you open your calendar app on a Monday morning.
Yes.
Because on one hand, you have that deeply ingrained cultural proverb, man plans, God laughs.
Right, the fatalistic view.
Exactly. It's this idea that trying to map out your future is essentially a fool's errand because the universe, or God, is just going to upend it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But then right next to that, you have this hyper-pragmatic advice out there in the culture, the whole plan your work and work your plan mentality.
Which essentially tells you that if you fail, it is entirely on you.
Right, because you just didn't strategize well enough.
Mm.
And navigating between those two extremes, fatalism on one side and sheer self-reliance on the other, it's just exhausting.
It is exhausting, and it's a uniquely human struggle. I mean, how do we as believers honor God's absolute sovereignty over our lives while still taking the practical, responsible steps to prepare for tomorrow?
That's the big question.
That is the question we are bringing to the table today. And to anchor us, Brother Brum's essay points to a single ancient proverb that just cuts right through all that noise.
Yeah.
It's Proverbs chapter 24, verse 27.
Do you have it there?
I do. It says, put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house.
Put your outdoor work in order. It's such a grounded, dirty hands piece of advice.
It really is.
And I love that we are starting here because it forces us out of the clouds of abstract theology and right into the dirt.
Right into the actual soil.
Exactly. Because to really grasp what this means for you, whether you are managing a household or running a business or maybe just trying to figure out your next career move, we have to understand the world this proverb was born into.
Absolutely.
Because the original audience wasn't sitting in a climate-controlled office staring at a spreadsheet.
No, they definitely weren't.
They were standing in a field looking at the sky, wondering if they were going to survive the winter.
Exactly. To get the full weight of this, we really need to step into the sandals of an ancient Israelite farmer in the Near East.
Paint that picture for us.
Well, the agrarian calendar governed everything. I mean, life and death were dictated by the seasons.
Right.
So when the proverb says, put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready, it is talking about a very specific, unforgiving window of time.
Because of the weather patterns there.
Yes. In that part of the world, you have the early rains in the autumn. The ground there, it's been baked as hard as concrete all summer long.
Right. Just totally impenetrable.
And then it finally softens. So
Yeah.
you have this massive sense of urgency to plow that dirt and get the seed in the ground.
And if you don't?
Well, if you miss that window, or if you decide you have other priorities, the rains come and go, the seed doesn't take root, and 6 months later, your family starves.
Wow.
It is that simple.
Yep.
The field is the singular source of your survival and your income for the entire extended family.
Right. So contrast that with the second half of the proverb. After that, build your house.
Right, the house comes second.
Yes. And the house represents shelter, obviously. But in this ancient context, building or expanding the house really represents comfort. It represents upgrading your living situation. And I think this hits on a massive human temptation that is honestly just as relevant today as it was 3,000 years ago.
Oh, undoubtedly.
We have this magnetic draw toward building the house before we tend the field.
We want the comfort.
We want the comfort. We want the aesthetic, the immediate gratification, long before we want to do the grueling, unglamorous work of securing the foundation.
Oh, absolutely. It reminds me of, well, think about the analogy of spending your entire Saturday agonizing over the perfect, aesthetically pleasing throw pillows for your living room couch,
Right.
but completely ignoring the fact that your roof is actively caving in.
Yes, that is exactly it.
We love the throw pillows because they are instant gratification. You buy them, you put them on the couch, and boom, you feel like you've accomplished something.
But you haven't really secured anything.
No.
Yeah.
But the proverb is pulling us back to reality. It's teaching us the discipline of prioritizing our responsibilities.
The sequence.
Yes, wisdom demands a sequence. It says the hard, outdoor, weather-dependent work must come first. The comfort of the house has to wait.
Because if you build a magnificent house, but have no crop in the field.
You are just going to starve inside a beautifully decorated living room.
Yeah. Right. But wait, let's push on that a little bit.
Okay.
Because it is easy to say tend the field. But in modern life, the house is often what society judges us on.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Right. The car we drive, the title we hold, the literal house we live in, those are the visible markers of success.
Very visible.
While the field is often invisible work. Paying down debt or going to marriage counseling or even establishing quiet habits of prayer. Nobody sees that.
No, you don't get applause for that.
Exactly. So taking this ancient wisdom seriously, it requires a massive shift in what we actually value. It requires a maturity to delay gratification that frankly goes against every marketing message we see today.
That is exactly the shift the proverb is trying to produce in us. It is a profound call to maturity. And what makes this so fascinating to me is that for the ancient Israelite, this wasn't just practical financial advice.
Right.
It was deeply theological. The land they were farming wasn't just a real estate investment for them.
It was a gift.
It was a sacred trust. They believed God owned the land, and they were the tenants. Their entire covenant relationship with God was tied to the rhythms of that dirt.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, you see this clearly in Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 14. God promises to give the rain for the land in its season, the early rain and the later rain, so that the people might gather in their grain.
Which brings up a really interesting tension for the listener to think about.
What's that?
Well, if God is the one who controls the rain, and God is the one who promises the harvest, why not just pray for rain and chill out?
Yes.
I mean, why the intense emphasis on human labor and preparation? If God is sovereign, why does the farmer have to break his back plowing the field at all?
That is the crucial question, isn't it? And the biblical answer is that planning and laboring were never viewed as secular alternatives to faith.
They weren't opposed to each other.
No, they were the very expression of faith. Knowing that God provided the rain did not mean the farmer could just sleep through the planting season. Israel's faith never encouraged passivity. You plow the field because you believe God is going to send the rain.
Oh, I love that. You prepare for the provision.
Exactly. If you don't plow, you are essentially saying you don't trust the rain is coming. Your diligence is grounded in your reverence for the Lord.
It's a partnership.
It is. As Psalm 127 reminds us, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain.
Yeah.
But notice the phrasing there, they still have to build.
Yes.
Human responsibility and divine blessing are entirely meant to interlock.
That completely flips the script on how we often view our daily tasks.
How so?
Well, tending the field isn't an alternative to trusting God. It is the physical manifestation of trusting Him.
Yes, beautifully said.
And if we look at the historical timeline, Brother Brahm's essay notes that when these proverbs were being compiled, Israel wasn't just living in a peaceful vacuum.
Not at all.
They were facing intense geopolitical pressures. You have the Assyrian Empire growing, you have the Babylonians later on, trade routes are constantly shifting, and there's this constant threat of famine or invasion.
Exactly. The ancient world was incredibly volatile. So in that kind of environment, wise planning isn't just about maximizing crop yield.
Right, it's deeper than that.
It's about building a resilient household that can weather chaos. The families who sequenced their work correctly, who prioritized the fields and stored up the harvest before they worried about expanding their courtyards.
They were the ones who survived?
Yes, they survived when the surrounding political or economic systems collapsed. It really shows us that God uses thoughtful, mundane planning as a literal part of His protective care for His people.
Okay, but Israel's history wasn't static.
No, it wasn't.
So how did this idea hold up hundreds of years later when the Israelites were literally dragged into exile by Babylon?
That's a great question.
Because it's one thing to plan your fields when you are living in the Promised Land under King Solomon and everything is great. It's an entirely different thing when Jerusalem is burning. You have been deported to a foreign empire, and you are surrounded by people who worship entirely different gods.
It's total devastation.
Exactly. So does the wisdom of Proverbs 24:27 still apply when your entire world has just ended?
That is such a powerful pivot, because the answer is a resounding yes, but in a way that must have just shocked the exiles.
How did God speak to them in that moment?
Think about Jeremiah chapter 29. The Israelites are sitting in Babylon, deeply traumatized.
Creeping by the rivers of Babylon.
Yes, and false prophets are running around telling them, hey, don't unpack your bags. God is going to crush Babylon in 2 years, and we are all going home.
Just a false hope of an immediate rescue.
Exactly. But God sends a letter through the prophet Jeremiah, and what does he tell them? He essentially reiterates the proverb.
What does the letter say?
He says, build houses and live in them, plant gardens and eat their produce, take wives, have children, seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile.
That had to be absolutely devastating to hear at first.
Oh, to be told to settle in.
To be told to plant a garden in the land of your captors? I mean, planting a garden isn't a weekend project.
No, it takes time.
It requires tilling, sowing, watering, and waiting. It is an act of long-term investment. God is commanding them to engage in thoughtful preparation for the future, carried out right in the middle of their deepest trauma.
Yes. God is basically saying, I have a future and a hope for you, and the way you live out your trust in that future is by planting an orchard today.
Wow.
Even in exile, the call is to sequence your life, do the foundational work, and build resilience.
That is so profound.
And this isn't just a theory, by the way. The Bible refuses to leave this as an abstract concept.
We see it in real lives.
We do. We see this tension between divine sovereignty and human planning play out in the flesh with actual people. And I think the best place to see this, which the essay highlights beautifully, is the life of Joseph in the book of Genesis.
Oh, Joseph's story in Genesis 41 is basically a masterclass in logistics.
It really is.
I mean, he goes from a prison cell to being second in command of all of Egypt.
Just an incredible trajectory.
And it starts because Pharaoh has these disturbing dreams about 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows. And God gives Joseph the interpretation.
Which is a terrifying interpretation.
It is. He says there will be 7 years of unprecedented agricultural abundance, followed immediately by 7 years of a famine so severe it will wipe out the memory of the good years.
Now stop right there and look at what Joseph does next.
Okay.
Because he has just received a direct, infallible revelation from God about the future. He knows exactly what is going to happen.
There's zero doubt.
Right. Now, if Joseph had the mindset that many modern believers have, this idea that hyper-spiritual people just sort of let go and let God...
You just passively trust.
Right. He would have simply held a prayer meeting, praised God for the warning, and then just waited for manna to fall from the sky when the famine hit.
But he doesn't do that at all.
Not even close.
He institutes a massive nationwide taxation and storage plan. He tells Pharaoh to appoint overseers over the land to take 1/5 of the produce of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years.
The logistics of that are staggering.
He builds storehouses in the cities, he gathers grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and he keeps it under guard.
Yes.
It is an administrative feat that boggles the mind when you think about the absolute lack of modern technology.
No computers, no modern shipping.
He had to calculate the volume of the harvest, build the infrastructure to protect it from rot and theft, and manage the personnel to enforce the collection.
And here's the crucial takeaway for you listening right now.
It's just so important.
Sometimes in Christian circles, we fall into this trap of thinking that making a meticulous spreadsheet-level plan is somehow evidence of a lack of faith.
We really do think that sometimes.
We think, well, if I really trusted God for my finances or my future, I wouldn't need to save so aggressively or plan so carefully.
We think faith means flying blind.
Exactly. But Joseph shatters that false dichotomy. Joseph's meticulous planning was absolutely not a lack of faith.
No.
His administrative strategy was the exact mechanism God used to preserve the known world, to save the nation of Egypt, and crucially, to save Jacob's family from starvation.
And that family was the seed of the promised Messiah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Human responsibility building silos and calculating grain yields was perfectly entwined with divine intention.
He's living the proverb.
He is living out the proverb. He is doing the massive, grueling outdoor work of getting the fields ready and securing the harvest long before the comfort of survival is assured.
It is a profound partnership. He didn't see any contradiction between God's sovereign warning and his own responsibility to essentially grab a clipboard and start organizing.
A divine clipboard.
Right. And we see a remarkably similar dynamic centuries later in the life of Nehemiah.
Oh, Nehemiah is such a great example.
This is another narrative Brother Brahm unpacks for us. Nehemiah is living in Persia, serving as the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes.
A very high-ranking, comfortable position.
Very comfortable. But he gets word that the exiles who have returned to Jerusalem are in tremendous trouble, and the walls of the city are just a pile of rubble.
And the emotional toll on him is immense. Nehemiah chapter 1 tells us he wept, he mourned for days, he fasted, and he prayed before the God of heaven.
He is broken over this.
He spends roughly 4 months in this state of deep, fervent prayer. But watch what happens when the moment finally arrives to act.
This is in chapter 2, right?
Yes, in chapter 2. He is serving wine to the king, and the king notices he looks sad, which, by the way, was a capital offense in the Persian court.
You do not bring your bad vibes into the presence of the king.
You certainly do not. The king asks him what is wrong, and Nehemiah is terrified. The text says he prays to the God of heaven in that split second, and then he speaks.
A quick arrow prayer.
Right. But when he speaks, he doesn't just ask for vague help.
Right. He doesn't just say, oh, please bless my people. He has an incredibly detailed punch list ready to go.
He really does.
He asks for letters of safe passage through the provinces beyond the river. He asks for a specific letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, to requisition timber.
Very specific timber.
Right, to make beams for the gates of the fortress, for the wall of the city, and for the house that he shall occupy.
He thought of everything.
He really had. He has thought through the entire supply chain and the geopolitical hurdles of the journey before he ever even opened his mouth to the king.
Exactly. Nehemiah balanced intense spiritual dependence with rigorous logistical preparation.
That's the balance.
He prayed as if everything depended on God, and he planned as if the supply chain depended on him.
Yes.
And the beautiful thing is, he recognized God's hand in his planning. When the king grants his requests, Nehemiah writes, "And the king granted me what I asked, for the good hand of my God was upon me."
He gives God the credit.
He didn't say the king granted my request because my PowerPoint presentation was flawless.
Right.
He gave the glory entirely to God, but God used his careful preparation to accomplish the task. And that preparation continues even after he finally gets to Jerusalem.
Oh, this is a great part of the story.
This is one of my favorite parts, actually. He arrives, and he doesn't immediately hold a rally.
No big speech.
No, he doesn't cast a vision for the masses right away. He waits 3 days, and then he gets up in the dead of night with just a few men.
Very secretive.
He rides his animal through the ruins of the city in the moonlight, secretly surveying the broken walls and the burned gates.
He is assessing the damage.
He is doing the quiet, unglamorous work of assessing the reality of the situation. He is forming a complete architectural and strategic plan before he ever speaks a single word to the officials or the priests about the work.
That is the ultimate embodiment of put your outdoor work in order.
Truly.
He is doing the hard foundational assessment. He is looking at the dirt and the rubble before he attempts to build.
Which is exactly what the proverb commands.
And this isn't just an Old Testament phenomenon either. As the essay bridges into the New Testament, we see the exact same principle at work in the early church, particularly with the Apostle Paul.
Which is fascinating to me because we often picture Paul as this uniquely spirit-led maverick.
Just sort of drifting where the wind blows.
Exactly, just wandering the Mediterranean coastline, waiting for a prophetic dream to tell him where to walk next.
But that wasn't him at all.
No, when you actually read the book of Acts and his epistles, the guy was a master strategist.
Absolutely. Paul was incredibly deliberate.
He had an itinerary.
He did. In Acts chapter 15, we see him making plans to revisit and strengthen the specific churches he had previously planted. He isn't just throwing darts at a map.
No.
In Romans chapter 15, he lays out a very clear multi-year itinerary for the church in Rome.
And it spans a huge geographic area.
It does. He tells them he plans to go to Jerusalem to deliver financial aid, then he intends to visit them in Rome, and then he expects them to help send him on his way to Spain.
Which was basically the edge of the known world at that time.
Exactly. He is looking at the map, evaluating the cultural centers, and looking for strategic, unreached hubs to plant the gospel.
But here is where we really need to introduce a bit of reality.
Okay.
Because this brings up a huge pain point for anyone who likes to plan.
What's that?
Well, Paul made all these careful, strategic, righteous plans, and they frequently fell apart.
They really did.
Acts chapter 16 is the classic example. Paul and his team have a solid strategy to go preach the word in the province of Asia. But the text says they were forbidden by the Holy Spirit.
A divine roadblock.
So they pivot. They try to go north into Bithynia. But again, the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them.
Blocked again.
So if planning is so biblical and so wise, What are we supposed to make of the fact that our best, most prayerful plans are so often blocked?
That is the crux of the Christian experience right there, and it is a vital lesson. Thoughtful preparation does not guarantee the outcome you envisioned.
That's tough to hear.
Let me say that again because someone listening really needs to hear it today. Your careful preparation does not guarantee a fixed outcome.
Wow.
God reserves the right to override your itinerary. However, what planning does do is position you to move. It creates momentum.
Oh, I really like that. Planning creates momentum.
Think about it. Because Paul was moving, because he had an itinerary and was actively walking down a Roman road, he was in a posture where God could steer him.
He wasn't stagnant.
No, it is much easier to turn a ship that is already moving than one that is sitting dead in the water.
That makes perfect sense.
If Paul had just been sitting still in Antioch, paralyzed, waiting for a mystical sign in the clouds, the Macedonian call he eventually gets in a vision wouldn't have meant anything.
He wouldn't have been in a position to answer it.
Right. His planning provided the framework within which God could redirect his steps.
So the failure of the plan wasn't a failure of Paul's faith.
Not at all.
The plan served its purpose by getting him to the intersection where God actually wanted him.
Precisely. The biblical narratives of Joseph, Nehemiah, and Paul all combine to show us that planning is intensely biblical.
They all show that sequence.
Yes. Good intentions must be paired with preparation, and God routinely uses the wisdom we practice long before the result becomes visible.
Which naturally leads us to ask, what does this reveal about the nature of God himself?
That's where we have to go next.
Why does God prefer to work through order and sequence? And the essay makes a really profound connection here, stretching all the way back to the very first chapter of the Bible.
Yes, Brother Brahm takes us back to Genesis chapter 1. This really elevates our entire perspective.
How so?
Well, Scripture affirms that the Lord governs all things, but it also reveals that God is a God of profound order. Look at how he brings the universe into existence.
Right, the creation narrative.
The earth was formless and void in Hebrew, that's tohu wabohu, chaotic and empty. But God doesn't just snap his fingers and make a completed earth appear instantly.
He could have, but he didn't.
Right. He works in a deliberate, sequenced progression over 6 days. He brings order out of the chaos.
He separates the light from the darkness. He separates the waters from the dry land.
Sequence.
Right, he creates the environment before he creates the creatures that will inhabit it. There is a divine logic to it all.
Exactly. He creates the light before he creates the plants that need the light to photosynthesize. He creates the dry land before he creates the animals that walk on it. There is a necessary sequence.
Phil.
Yes. So when you sit down on a Sunday night and sequence your tasks for the week, when you prioritize the heavy lifting of the field before the comfort of the house,
We're doing something deeply spiritual.
You are not just being a good capitalist or being productive. You are actually reflecting God's orderly design.
You are bearing the image of your Creator.
You are. Planning is an invitation to participate in his structured care over human life. You are bringing order out of the chaos of your own schedule, just as God brought order out of the chaotic deep.
That transforms the entire act of planning. It takes it from a mundane chore into an actual act of worship.
It really does honor God's character.
But there is a massive danger here.
Let's talk about it.
And I think this is where many of us get tripped up. How do we exercise this God-given ability to bring order to our lives without becoming utterly arrogant?
That is the temptation.
Because the moment I get my color-coded calendar working perfectly, the temptation is to believe that I am the master of my own destiny. I start thinking, I don't really need God because I have a really good system.
And that is the exact danger the book of James warns us about.
James has strong words for this.
He does. In James chapter 4, verses 13 through 15, we read a really sharp rebuke to early Christian business people.
What does he tell them?
James says, "Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring."
They are just assuming their plans will work perfectly.
Right. And then he says, "What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes."
Ouch. Being called a vanishing mist is a pretty quick way to deflate your ego.
It's a very pastoral reality check. But look closely at what James is actually condemning here.
Yeah.
He is not condemning the act of planning itself, The merchants he is addressing needed to plan their travel.
Of course they did.
They needed to know what town they were going to. They needed to calculate their trade goods. They needed to forecast a profit. You can't run a business without doing that.
So what's the sin?
What James is condemning is the arrogance of planning without acknowledging the Lord's sovereign will. He tells them they ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that.
The old Latin phrase, Deo volente, Lord willing.
Exactly. Planning is deeply biblical, but it must be done with profound humility. We have to recognize our limits as finite creatures.
We don't know the future.
We don't. True wisdom assumes that all our careful spreadsheets, our 5-year plans, our retirement portfolios, they are all entirely subject to a God whose oversight is perfect and whose ways are higher than ours.
It is the difference between presumption and preparation.
Yes, say more about that.
Well, presumption says, I have planned this, therefore it will happen.
Right.
A preparation says, I have planned this to the best of my God-given ability, but I hold it with open hands, trusting that God is absolutely free to redirect it.
That's the perfect posture.
The Proverbs call to put our outdoor work in order reinforces this humility too. It assumes that wise planning is necessary, precisely because the final outcomes lie beyond our control.
Can't control the weather.
Exactly. We can prepare the field, we can plant the seed, but we cannot make it rain and we cannot force the seed to germinate.
Only God can do that.
That is a beautiful balance of diligence held within a posture of total dependence.
And when you step back, this balance reflects the grand unfolding plan of God himself throughout redemptive history.
The macro view.
Yes. From Genesis to Revelation, God unfolds his ultimate purposes in stages. He makes a promise to Abraham, centuries later. He rescues Israel from Egypt. He establishes David's throne.
All building towards something.
Yes, and ultimately, in the fullness of time, he sends Christ. Each stage demonstrates that God's purposes are moving steadily and purposefully toward fulfillment.
It makes me think about how our micro plans, our daily step-by-step decisions, actually mirror this macro movement of redemptive history.
They really do.
You might be tending to what feels like very mundane fields right now. Maybe you are studying for a credentialing exam or trying to rebuild trust in a broken relationship, or just patiently raising toddlers day in and day out.
Just putting the work in order.
Right. But we do this trusting that God is advancing his unseen eternal purposes through our ordinary sequential responsibilities.
Which brings us to the forward-looking hope that anchors everything. Because we know the end of the story.
We do.
The essay points us to prophetic promises, like those found in Isaiah chapter 2, which look toward a future marked by the complete restoration of all things.
Where swords are beaten into plowshares.
Yes, where the fullness of God's kingdom is finally realized. And because we have this eschatological hope, because we know with absolute certainty that God holds the ultimate future, we are freed from the paralyzing anxiety of the present.
I really want to highlight the relief in what you just said.
Please do.
For the listener who struggles with perfectionism or maybe just the overwhelming fear of making the wrong decision and ruining their life, there's immense freedom here.
So much freedom.
You are called to diligence. You are called to prepare your fields, but you do not carry the weight of the universe on your shoulders.
No, you definitely don't.
You carry the responsibility of the next faithful step. The ultimate outcomes rest securely in God's capable hands.
Which is such a relief.
It relieves you from the pressure of having to play God with your own life. It is a relief to know that even when our plans fail, God's plan for us does not.
That is exactly why the Apostle Paul could write to the Romans about how deeply he longed to visit them, but he peacefully acknowledged that he had been repeatedly prevented from doing so.
He didn't despair over the delay.
No, his persistence in planning showed his responsible action, but his peaceful acceptance of the delays showed his deep trust in God's timing. He knew God was in control, so he didn't throw a tantrum when the itinerary changed.
So let's take all of this rich theology, all this history, and bring it right into the living room of the person listening.
Let's get practical.
How do we take this ancient agrarian proverb and apply it to modern life today? If the ancient farmer had to literalize the proverb by plowing dirt before stacking stones for a house, what does it mean for us to put our outdoor work in order first?
We have to define our terms for today.
Right. We need to clearly identify our modern fields and our modern houses.
This is where it gets highly practical for you. Your field is the foundational responsibility that sustains you or your family spiritually, physically, or emotionally.
The essential work.
Yes, it is the work that must be done for true stability. Your house, in this analogy, represents comfort, expansion, visible success, or leisure.
Okay, let's run that through a few real-world categories. How about finances? That is a huge area of planning for most people.
It is. In the realm of finances, tending the field might mean doing the hard, disciplined, often painful work of aggressively paying off consumer debt, living on a strict budget, and building an emergency fund.
The unglamorous work.
Highly unglamorous. Nobody applauds you for making an extra payment on your student loans.
No, they don't.
Building the house, on the other hand, would be upgrading your lifestyle, buying a new car with a high payment because it looks great, or taking a luxury vacation you put on a credit card.
So the sequence matters here.
The proverb is screaming at us. Do the hard work of financial sequencing first. Tend the field before you decorate the house.
Oh, that stings, but it is so true. What about in our relationships?
In relationships, particularly marriage or close family dynamics, tending the field means doing the difficult, emotionally draining work of repairing foundational trust.
That is heavy work.
It is. It might mean committing to months of counseling, having hard conversations, and learning how to actually forgive.
So what's the house in that scenario?
Building the house would be taking on new, highly visible external commitments. It is the temptation to volunteer to lead a new ministry at church or join another community board while your marriage is quietly falling apart at home.
Wow.
You are building a public house while your private field is totally barren.
That is a profound warning. And I imagine it applies to our personal spiritual lives as well.
Absolutely. Spiritually, tending the field means building quiet, unseen habits. It is the daily discipline of reading scripture, praying in secret, and cultivating a hidden walk with God.
The root system.
Exactly. Building the house is seeking a public platform, craving visible spiritual leadership, or wanting to be recognized as a mature believer.
You want the fruit without the roots.
And you have to cultivate the hidden root before you can expect to safely carry the visible fruit. If you build a massive spiritual house without a deep root system in the field, the first storm of adversity will blow the whole thing over.
These examples clarify so much. A well-ordered life doesn't happen by accident. It grows from deliberate steps taken in the correct sequence.
Yes.
But practically speaking, how should a believer actually begin this process? When you are staring at the chaos of your life, trying to figure out what your field is and what your house is, where do you start?
The essay points back to the life of King David for a blueprint on this.
Oh, the story in 1 Samuel.
Yes, look at 1 Samuel chapter 23. David is facing a crisis. The Philistines are attacking a town, and David's men are terrified.
So he needs a plan.
He does. But before David formulates a strategic military plan, the text tells us explicitly he inquired of the Lord, he sought God's guidance first.
He didn't just rush into action.
No. And for us, the planning process must begin on our knees. It must be informed by prayer and a sincere desire to submit to the Lord's leading. Brother Brum directs us to James 1:5, which is an absolute lifeline here.
What does that verse say?
It says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him."
So we ask for the wisdom to discern the sequence.
Exactly.
We pray, Lord, what is the field in my life right now that I'm neglecting because I'm distracted by the comfort of the house?
That is the perfect prayer. You ask God to expose your misaligned priorities. Planning, in this sense, becomes a way of aligning your heart with God's character.
It's an act of submission.
It is. It creates the space for you to take responsible action while remaining deeply attuned to his voice.
But we also have to speak directly to the listener who is sitting there thinking, listen, I did all of that.
Right, the person who did it right.
I prayed. I sought counsel. I sequenced my priorities. I tended my field faithfully. And then everything fell apart anyway.
We have to address that reality.
We do. We have to address the reality of massive, unexpected disruptions. What do you say to the listener who has just had their careful plans completely upended by a sudden cancer diagnosis or a devastating layoff or a betrayal they never saw coming?
It happens every day.
How does the wisdom of Proverbs 24:27 hold up when the field you prepared so carefully just gets washed away by a flood?
That is the deepest pain point we face, and it is a reality of living in a profoundly broken world. When disruption hits like that, we have to run to the anchor of Proverbs 16, verse 9.
Which says,
"The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps." When your plans are violently upended, the enemy wants to whisper two lies to you.
what are they?
First, that God has abandoned you, And second, that your careful preparation was a complete waste of time.
And those lies are just so easy to believe in the dark.
They really are.
Yeah.
But I want to offer a word of pastoral encouragement to you today. God is not surprised by your disruption.
He saw it coming.
He did. The preparation you did, the faithfulness you showed in tending that field, it was not wasted. God was using that diligence to shape your character.
He was building resilience in you.
Yes. He was forming you into someone who has the spiritual muscle to trust him now, even in the dark. Trusting God when life does not unfold as expected is the ultimate test of whether we truly believe he is the one who establishes our steps.
That is so true.
Your plans may have shattered, but God remains present. He remains purposeful. And he remains entirely faithful.
Amen.
Maintaining a steady heart when circumstances shift radically is only possible when you know that the architect of your life loves you, and that he is working all things together for your ultimate good, even when the immediate pain is blinding.
That changes the perspective entirely. Our security is not in the perfection of our plans, but in the perfection of our God.
Perfectly said.
His grip on us is stronger than our grip on our circumstances. And as we wrap up this application section, there's one final point the essay makes that shifts our focus from the individual back to the community.
Yes, this is vital.
We tend to view planning as a purely private matter. It is my calendar, my budget, my goals. But when we look back at those ancient extended families, their well-ordered lives inherently bless the people around them.
They supported the whole village.
Exactly. So how does our careful planning function as a blessing to our local church today?
It is so crucial to see this connection. A well-ordered life is a profound gift to your community. When you manage your finances wisely, when you sequence your family priorities, when you tend your spiritual fields, you create margin.
Margin is so rare these days.
It is. You create stability. And when you are stable, you are infinitely better positioned to bear the burdens of others in the body of Christ.
You have the capacity to help.
Exactly. If you have budgeted well, you have the financial margin to help a brother who just lost his job. If you have ordered your time well, you have the emotional margin to sit and offer counsel to a sister whose marriage is in crisis.
Margin equals ministry.
Exactly. Your diligent planning literally becomes a ministry. It is a way to serve others, reflecting God's order and care to a world that feels incredibly chaotic.
That is a beautiful way to look at it.
It proves that planning is not just a personal productivity hack. It is a vital, tangible part of loving your neighbor.
What a beautiful picture of the church functioning exactly as it should. The harmony between our responsible diligence and our dependence on God creates a community that is resilient, generous, and faithful.
It truly does. As we bring this deep dive to a close today, let's summarize the core harmony we have been exploring. We have seen that there is a beautiful design relationship between human diligence and divine dependence.
They are not enemies.
No. Planning is an act of faith. It is not a sign of self-reliance. From the ancient agrarian calendars to the massive logistical administration of Joseph in Egypt.
To the nighttime surveys of Nehemiah.
Yes, to the flexible, spirit-led itineraries of Paul's scripture consistently shows us that God delights in working through our careful preparation.
He blesses the preparation.
He calls us to order our lives, fully knowing that he is the one who ultimately directs our paths.
And to honor the structure of Brother Brum's essay, we want to return directly to the closing text that has anchored our entire conversation today.
Proverbs 24:27.
Yes. Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house.
Such a powerful verse.
It is. And the final takeaway for you contains both a deed encouragement and a gentle warning.
Yes, the encouragement is this. God deeply values your careful preparation. He sees the quiet, unglamorous work you are doing out in the field.
Even when nobody else does.
Especially then. And he often uses those thoughtful, mundane, sequential steps to bring about his profound provision in your life and the lives of those you love. Your daily diligence matters immensely to him.
But there is a warning, too.
The warning is equally clear. Do not presume upon tomorrow. Resist the deeply human temptation to build your comforts and secure your ease before you have done the hard foundational work of tending to the essential responsibilities God has entrusted to you.
Before we sign off, here's a thought to chew on as you look at your week ahead. If God uses our faithful planning as the very mechanism to shape the future, what does the blank space in your calendar right now say about what you are trusting him to do next?
That is a great question.
Think about it. Are you preparing the field for the rain you are praying for?
That is a challenging word to end on today. As you go back into the reality of your day, I want to leave you with a short, simple blessing. May the Lord grant you the wisdom to order your days aright. May He give you the strength and the diligence to faithfully tend the fields He has entrusted to you, even when the work is hard and the harvest seems incredibly far away. And above all, may He grant you the profound, unshakable peace of knowing that He lovingly and perfectly directs your every step. Thank you for diving deep with us today.